So we're here with Senator Lieberman in his office in D.C., and we're going to be talking about, your life as a U.S. Senator, a vice presidential candidate, and an observant Jew. In your book, The Gift of Rest, you mentioned that you had gotten away from observance in college, and there was something that brought you back. Could you tell, I think it's sort of an important message because there's so many Jews that are not so connected to their heritage these days, and I loved what you said about why you decided to come back.
So you're starting with the bad part.
Well,
It's okay. So I was raised in an Orthodox family, although by today's standards of Orthodoxy, it would be called left-wing Orthodox and right-wing conservative. But we went to an Orthodox show and it was observant. And when I went away to college, I stopped observing Shabbat. Interestingly, for reasons that I couldn't explain but made me feel good, I continued to daven every morning and put on talis and tefillin. So why did I do that? Why did I leave it? Part of it, I think, as I look back, was just, standard rebellion from parental authority, and so I was away, and so I didn't observe Shabbat. The second thing was that I had convinced myself that if I wasn't working 7 days a week, I could get expelled from Yale College. But I later found out that you really have to work at it to get expelled from Yale. But those were excuses. And anyway, that was the way it was. And so you wonder, why did I come back to Shabbat? So it was interesting. I can't say that I felt badly about all this. I threw myself into college life, and of course I was always very self-identified as Jewish, proudly Jewish. During law school, my grandmother passed away, and she was very important to me. We basically lived with her. She lived with us. She was like, we always used to tease that my mother and father were the prime ministers, but there was always the appeal to the Queen or to the Supreme Court, and she always ruled in our favor. So we loved Baba, as we called her. But she was really more seriously my connection to the old country, but in some sense that I can only appreciate now, didn't then. She was my connection to emunah, to faith, to Orthodox tradition. She was a wonderful woman, and it was all in a positive context. It wasn't, yes, there were rules, but I didn't experience it as burdensome. She was warm, she was funny, she was loving, all that stuff. So when she passed away, it affected me, and I had a feeling that came over me that my grandmother was now gone, my mother's mother, and that this link in the extraordinary chain of Jewish history going back to Mount Sinai was no longer there, and that I now had a responsibility. I had a choice, really. Was I going to put myself in the chain, or was I going to stand back and run the risk that the line that would follow from me would no longer be involved in Jewish observance or Jewish identity? And so I was compelled to come back.
So one of the things we do at Jew in the City is talk about misconceptions people have about Orthodox Jews.
Yeah.
I think people think that most Orthodox men have to end up as rabbis and most women have to end up as housewives, and don't realize that it's possible.
Most have to end up
as housewives. I think there's. I was just interviewed by the Daily Beast by the secular Jewish woman, and she told me, "What about Mindy Meyer's campaign? It's against Jewish law." I said, "Nothing. I mean, maybe I don't like Legally Blonde, but I'm saying like there's no." And she said, "Maybe my secular bias is coming in." I said, "There's no laws," and she wouldn't believe me, and she printed an article anyway.
Yeah.
So for people that think that you can't succeed in your career as an observant Jew, like what have you found? How's it actually?
Yeah. Well, first, in very many ways, the gender roles of men and women in the traditional Jewish community, to a greater extent than most people know, reflect the gender roles in the greater society. So my mother didn't work, except that when my dad needed her to go to the liquor store he owned, she would go and help him. But most women didn't work then. Today, in the observant Jewish community, the women, as usual, are carrying more than the fair share of the load. But what I'm saying is, I see it with my children, my daughters. They're not only, having children, thank God, but they're working. and they're involved in careers, and that reflects the changing opportunities for women in our society more broadly. I mean, there's nothing that in traditional Judaism that says a woman can't work, a woman can't be a doctor, lawyer, business executive, all of which they're doing today. Senator.
I was trying to your seat before.
Yeah, well, you'll be a good senator. I'm happy to help you in that because I'm leaving politics this year. So when you run, you call me.
Jewish outreach doesn't work out for me.
Yeah, no, really. It's you probably have a more certain future in Jewish outreach. There's always a market and a demand. So, but let me come back to another point that you asked. It's not just a question of gender roles. This is a question of and in some ways, I've tried to do things that have meaning, etc., in my public career. But one thing I think that my career, I can say with confidence, really does say to people is that you can be religiously observant and be involved in the broadest work of society. That, in fact, I say to groups of students, Jewish but non-Jewish too, from religious groups, you are blessed to be alive in a country right now, America, where you will, in my opinion, never have to choose between your secular career goals and your religious observance. And I really believe that. And my own experience has proved that, really.